start over for the recording, but Google, the data that when we need to verify that we are human on, like the internet, and
Right.
we have to like select the boxes in which cars are, or robot lights or something like that. So it's actually very interesting because that is live data that Google
Mm-hmm.
gets from their cars. It's
Right.
like actual live training data, and then Google uses humans all over the world to train their data, and that's
I
actually
think
so clever.
right. But that taps into the concept of the ethical use of AI. Because
Mm,
now, do people have consent on using that information? Like, do they have permission to use that information? You see what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
So that information may be free in a way they kind of like consume it, but people didn't give consent to be used like that. And then people are not aware that the information is being recorded and being used for company purposes.
That actually brings up a very interesting topic, because you would think that, so people are very aware of their personal data, and that
Right.
includes stuff like their name, their address, cell phone number, all of those
Uh-huh.
things. But they have no problem. We have no problem sharing our human thoughts, in order to train the AI set. But
Hmm.
like, so basically, what I'm saying is that there's kind of like a scale as to which people will allow personal data to be used to train industry. And it's interesting because we don't know where that barrier is. We don't know how willing people are, to what extent are people willing to give up personal data in order to actually create better products that can enhance their lives. But it's like, once
So
you know their name or
right.
ID number, then it's too personal.
So I think that's where we get to the divided society kind of platform. When people this half of the society is basically um comfortable with sharing the information, their personal information with the company, and then the other society, the rest of it, is not comfortable with it. So people are
Mm,
divided in the way. Some are comfortable, some are uncomfortable.
yeah. Now, what do you propose actually? How do you monitor that?
I think with the coming years, I don't know currently, but with the coming years, the definition of privacy is gonna change a lot.
Yeah.
It's definitely gonna change a lot because to kind of increase safety levels in all cities, basically, like how we're doing it in Pretoria now. We have surveillance at next level now. It's better than
Mm,
it was last year. You know what I mean?
yeah, it's getting better.
Yeah, exactly. So privacy is going to change as a definition. It's going to basically be something that's different from what we know from today. The VS
Mm,
Code is going to be achieving safety for people.
mm.
So what people basically say is not going to matter that much. They're going to be given privacy, but it's going to be kind of like 40% of what we know from today.
Yeah, that's a very interesting concept, because I think us as human beings, the concept of privacy
Hmm.
is to kind of be, so you feel safe in your solitude state, kind of. And when you're on the internet, um, you're not mentally allowed to go to that space. And I
Exactly.
think like incognito mode, um, I think maybe something like that will work. So when you log on to anything, when you use data for anything, I think
Right.
maybe what's going to happen is that industry will actually, hi Francie,
Hello.
welcome. So we're just
Welcome, bro.
discussing the privacy of industry, and how will, so industry needs a lot of data in order to like train AI, in order to have
Hmm.
like successful products. But now the thing comes in, where are you going to get that data from? And if you need the data from humans, where is the barrier? Where's the line for having for giving people privacy and not giving them privacy in order to collect their data.
Wow, that's quite interesting. I don't know if you guys also heard about the Xperia data breach, how easy it was to get a lot of people's data from basically just the scammer social engineering data from a credit bureau. So I don't even know, I mean, even if you have legitimate data exchange, I don't know how much protection there actually is at the moment. I don't know the law and stuff like that, but it is worrying.
So even systems like, you know, VPN these days and the laws of protection of privacy these days are not actually effective in protecting people's rights to privacy, essentially.
Yeah.
So I think that's when it comes to, for instance, in South Africa, a lot of people are not exposed to the knowledge when it comes to systems like AI. So that's why privacy is not really an important subject or important topic when it comes to people being invaded by AI systems, because they're not really aware of the system.
That's
right?
very true, actually. Like their concern is mainly just, am I gonna lose my job?
Yeah.
But it doesn't go further than that because of the lack of literacy.
And they which is dangerous because they're unaware that most of the information, because it exists in the internet now, like for instance how teenagers these days, which is what I see every day from my neighborhood, they are basically stuck on Facebook. They upload everything from their essential details, the important details about them, their personal details. They upload everything, images of themselves that you wouldn't share, basically. They are unaware that they don't have full control of their lives in the internet.
That's very scary because so I don't have Facebook and I basically removed myself from Instagram because of this. And I know that the majority of people will be like, wow, you're such an outsider. And I may be, but I just know that there's such a feeling of relief knowing that these companies can't buy my attention, they can't buy my interest. And there's like a sense of freedom in knowing that you have that. And it's kind of scary that there's no literacy about it, because I mean, you want all people to live like that, but it's difficult.
That's one of the reasons why we as a society exist, actually, just to kind of like implode this kind of knowledge, you know.
Yeah.
So now my question is, we have touched on the privacy part, but now AI is spreading throughout all fields. And because today we're talking about the theme of what? AI in the workplace. The biggest job industry in South Africa when it comes to different sectors or different cities, is transportation, local taxis, right? So what do you guys think will happen when AI hits the local taxi industry? Self-driving taxis.
Yo, Francie, dude. That's a big question.
I mean, let's say the technology was here like right now today. I'm just thinking in terms of who'd use it. I think it would probably be a company. It wouldn't be on an individual basis. It would be a larger company trying to get in that market. And that would probably push a lot of the smaller business kind of model of, you have your own taxi and you entrepreneur like that. It would probably push a lot of them out the market, because now, I mean, you'd probably still legally require a driver there, maybe, just in case things happen. But I wonder how much they'd be paid, because you kind of just need someone that can kind of drive. I don't know. I think it would push a lot of like small entrepreneurs out. but it's also a very ideal case because the tech isn't completely there; it's very close. But
Right.
also, like in terms of the capital needed to invest, in like a large business like that, I don't know if someone would want to do it here at this stage, but maybe in future. But yeah, I think for a lot of small entrepreneurs, it'll like very much push them out. So it'll probably be a
True.
company with more capital being able to deploy this kind of high technology vehicles and have a lot of them. Because what's the point of having one
Yeah.
necessarily if it costs more to run it and stuff? So they probably have a lot of them. People would lose jobs. It's a good thing if we're in like this ideal utopian state where you've got UBI and all kinds of nice things. That's
Mhm.
very far, I think. Then it wouldn't be such a big problem, but still, for funnier future it would.
I think you've just mentioned something else that I just remembered that both the Chinese and the Americans use. They kind of integrate the AI self-driving system with human subjects in the car. So basically, when the system is driving, the human kind of acts as a backup system if something happens, and then they react quickly to the mistake. But that fast forward to kind of like 10 years from now, and then the system is perfected. Then probably 60% of the population who are using the transportation industry to make a living. Now, those people are going to lose a lot of jobs, and they're not going to be able to support their families. And then the Chinese raised a very important subject that I think is something very interesting, because they said if people are not going to be working, they're not going to be having a job to kind of like provide for their families, earning income in a way, they're gonna have to, the government has to pay them or give them money for free for just staying at home, which is something that's basically happening right now today with the lockdown. Because we give, and there's this thing, the government is giving people free 350 rand per month, I think, and I think it increases. So
So Dave,
that's
yeah, sorry, continue.
so I feel like that same thing, it might happen with in the transportation industry when people are not working and the systems are basically working. So if you're sitting at home, the government has to basically provide for you because they forced you out of your jobs.
Mm. I want to add something to that. It's very interesting because my my granddad used to tell me this story all the time, of the industry making the transition from using horses to transport to cars
Right.
to like vehicles, and there was a big scare for that because all people who worked with horses and tamed them and sold them, they will be out of jobs. But
Mm-hmm.
then what came out of that is jobs like taxi drivers, and now this is kind of on the same scale but logarithmic, and it's
True.
so much more extreme. And I just wonder, because it's, from my point of view, it's very inevitable that jobs will be created, even if we can't anticipate them now, but they will be created eventually.
Right.
But will we be able to keep up with that? Will we be able to keep up with the development of technology? So will we be too late to understand how we could work with AI?
So essentially, it goes back to the topic of literacy, basically. If a person is literate enough to understand how the system works, or if the person is not educated on how to use the system. So education is basically key when it comes to the working industry. So everything is based on how it's based on the knowledge that the person has on the use of that system, on the use of that technology. So you're right. According to history, when something else appears or when an advancement in technology happens, new jobs are born. But those people back then were also afraid that they're gonna lose jobs. That's why it's the same thing with us also. So I agree with that.
How about this? So I just thought of it. So if it's a bad idea, I don't take responsibility. But
Go
so
on.
how about, so we know that the AI will be able to replace certain administrative jobs and will be able to replace algorithmic quote unquote jobs, you know.
Right.
But then new jobs will be created. If we assume that jobs will be inevitable, if we assume that, then it means that people need to be trained into new positions. So
True.
our entire education system, which takes you probably 22 to 25 years to get to a point to be able to do a certain job, I think
Hmm.
that entire system will fold, because when your job is being replaced, it will most likely be artificial intelligence that will teach you how to operate in your new job.
Right. Right.
And your new job will be maybe something to train artificial intelligence to teach someone else how to perform their job based on the AI that knows what you're good at. I don't want to
Right.
go into too much depth, but it's like if all your personal data is available, artificial intelligence will understand what you're good at and what you're bad at. And then
Hmm.
it will most likely be able to um, make a certain specific, customized, personalized job for you in some sort of industry. So you will most likely not even work for one company. You will maybe assist 70 companies with one task, but it will all be integrated with a general artificial intelligence.
Yes.
And
No, that's.
if you think about it like that, then in essence, the currency of data is
Hmm.
going to be the most important thing. So creating data and using data will be like a certain form of currency. And it's interesting because we are moving to that digital currency like technology.
True.
But it's such a big idea that I wonder if it will be able to be adopted in
I
like our
think.
current society.
I think maybe the rest, maybe other parts of the world are already engaging on something like that. But for us, we're still further behind. For instance,
Mm,
the schooling system that you mentioned. Remember Elon Musk did this new school thingy with the space program.
mm,
Instead of teaching kids about the old ways of doing things, like for instance, let me make an example. Why teach students how to create an app using hardcore coding? Instead, people today, when you get into the industry, some people don't actually, or most industries don't actually require you to code. They actually require you to use the platform and create what? An app.
mm.
So I feel like that's how it's going to change from learning the basics or the hardcore techniques of creating something into the new modern ways of creating something. So that schooling system is definitely going to change gradually.
Yeah, like I mean, this also it actually touches on AI literacy, like actually just literacy in general.
Hmm.
So that's a very interesting concept because if we want a future where people can adapt quickly, we kind of
Right,
need to teach them that. We can't teach them that there's the set syllabus for everybody,
right.
um, and your performance within that set syllabus is that's it. Because
Hmm.
kind of in the diverse world of today, we're going to need way more skills than that set syllabus. You know, like it, we're going to need way more skills, way more specialized skills, and the only way to get that is to, as you said, like have a unique type of education system that can be customized to the individual and
True.
really amplify their strengths, and then put that strengths into industry, whether you are 12 years old or whether you are 30 years old.
So I feel like this also puts us to or it gives us the concept of teachers in the AI times. Like
Mm.
if a computer can take a knowledge of a book like this, which took about probably years for a person to kind of create, and then and a computer system can kind of record all of it in just 30 minutes. And you as a
Yeah,
teacher have to train for 3 years or 4 years or whatever just to learn all of that, and you haven't actually encompassed all that knowledge. You don't have it all in your mind, but the system has it all just like this in a matter of minutes.
exactly. So it's
So
actually interesting how the conversation of AI in the workplace is going back to literacy
yeah,
and the education system. Like that's something I didn't anticipate the conversation will go to, but it makes sense.
true.
The
Because I feel
entire,
like education
yeah,
is the starting point of everything. Like education is like the center core of all that we do and
exactly,
all, yeah, and the forward movement that we take as a nation.
exactly. How do you guys suggest? So let's kind of go about it like that. David, you give a suggestion, and then Francie, you give a suggestion. How do you guys suggest would be the ideal education system in order to adapt for what is ahead?
Okay,
If we could hypothetically change everything.
this is the interesting part for me. I was working on this idea for about what, a month now. Okay, so here's what I thought of it. I think I thought of it as like you're in a room as a student, right? Let's say a student, and then you get into this room. This room is surrounded by monitors, screens of every kind, and then they are run by an AI system, very developed AI system.
Mm.
So it puts you kind of like in a simulation. You go to class. This is how AI works along with teachers. So you have your teachers, and then you go to class. They kind of give you the theory, tell you what this is gonna be, and then you go to the simulation room. You can stay there for about 2 hours, whatever time you want, and then you just run the simulation. It's kind of like
Mm.
repetition, and then everything just gets stuck in your head because you went over it again and again and again and again. That's how you don't lose the content. So that education system is much more stronger because repetition makes it kind of like it gets the information stuck in your head. It's difficult to forget something that you've repeated 100 times.
So
If you sing a song,
basically, you're saying that instead of just having book knowledge, you kind
yeah,
of provide simulations in order to get
exactly,
experience, quote unquote.
exactly. Simulations make it easy to kind of learn because you have visuals, you have the voice in the back talking to you over and over again.
And action and
Yeah,
effect.
imagine just standing there and saying, you answer a question, it asks you, what's the escape velocity of a rocket system from Earth? And then you say a wrong answer and it says false. And it gives you a definition or it gives you the answer. And then it says try again.
And it
You go
actually
again.
gives you an animation of your
Yeah,
incorrect answer so that you can have like a good understanding why it was
exactly.
wrong.
True.
Wow,
Yeah, just like that.
that's interesting.
So
Damn.
it's very expensive though to develop that kind of system, but it works perfectly.
So now the problem, I would also, yes, I would really like to hear Francie's opinion as well. But the problem comes, how how big is the world? You know, like the population is almost 8 billion,
Yeah,
and in order for that to work, it needs to be scalable and reproducible, and it needs to be mass produced in order to be cheap, and everybody needs to be able to be step into a room simultaneously in order to have that simulation experience.
true. Okay, so that also takes us back to data being the gold mine of everything, data being the jewel that drives the
Hmm.
process or drives the education system. So if you have the data of the number of people, the population in the world, then you know what amount of simulations you need to develop.
Yeah. Also, maybe like virtual reality. Maybe
Yeah,
you can have a virtual reality set, and then you virtually step into the room of screens.
exactly. Okay, this system that I've just talked about right now is kind of like a system developed for essentially the basic part will be varsities. They have this specific path
Oh, tertiary.
because virtual classes, anybody can buy them, but not at the moment because they're still expensive, right? for everyone to have them.
Yes.
But they're kind of like a step forward from the virtual classes technology.
Yeah. And they kind of have to start with private industry.
Exactly.
Sure. Wow, that's a big concept. Francie, what's your opinion?
I've got an opinion, but I'm gonna first just list the things that I think now it's already there. There's already precedent in people using it. Then I'll just talk about the one that's a bit more like 50 to 100 years in the future, but it ties into the same thing, basically. At the moment, when I was a bit younger, I wanted to learn German. I kind of abandoned it, but I remember there was one website that had a specific way of teaching languages, but also other things too. From Morse code's also language, but also like other topics that aren't just language based and getting proficiency in it. And the approach, it wasn't exactly an AI. It was more like a smart kind of program that would take the content you need to learn and basically teach it to you in the way that you teach something, assess you, and the things you couldn't kind of pick up fast-ish enough, you would remember that, and the things you got straight and was easy to remember that as well, and then it would gradually start asking you more of the harder things till you got it. And then of course also zoom back to the easier things. Make sure you remember it, and by the time, and then there's a certain algorithm to decide, okay, you've mastered it now, because you could answer this kind of question. They change some things about the topic and how the question's asked, but you'd still need to be able to grasp that topic to answer it. And once you got everything, you could move on and then have these topics, but still, if you've completed a topic, it still remembers what you did there. So later on, it still at some point kind of slightly nudges in some things. So you're never completely done with the topic. It also always, over a certain amount of time, like 3 months later, it checks. Do you remember this? By asking you quickly. You can also check your own progress. It tells you, you're doing good. It schedules times for you. It's like your own personal study guide, mentor kind of thing. So that's what we have now. But to target it, as you guys said with data, you could see maybe initially humans would build the curriculums. But if you have an AI that's smart enough to predict trends in jobs, see what's needed for it, and try build the curriculum. But I think that's a bit far away. But yeah, people could assist in building this kind of curriculum. We could use this technology that's already present that that has a very good way of teaching people things. And then maybe if you had some problems that like, and even if you had questions, you have kind of today even chatbots that can kind of point you to the right direction, that can tell you, oh, read this resource for more info. But if you have problems that the AI can't give you, you could still have a tutor that a human there to ask more in depth or more in detail. But why I think this is really great, because in university I experienced kind of different kind of professors, and sometimes they were on the extremes. In chemistry, there was one extreme where the prof would focus a lot on theory, but wouldn't do a lot of problems at all. So when the tests came, you kind of, okay, you know why things are, but you can't really work things out that well. You're like really by yourself on that. And then there was another extreme, a prof very minimally did theory, but did a lot of practical questions on how to go about it. But if you can find that kind of middle ground where you understand the deeper concepts, but actual practical, solving problems and stuff, also drilling that in that method, that language thing taught you. We have different problems. It sees what kind of problems you just handle well, and which do you struggle with, and it asks you more of the struggling things till you get it. And then later on asks you that again gradually. Like, it's all complex things, but it's very good at teaching. So that's what we have now. So 50 to 100 years time, I think if you could have data or AI to analyze job trends, analyze what's needed, it would be very close to AGI actually, because it's also able to see, what you need to know to effectively program a thing. But at that stage, I don't know why it wouldn't just do it itself.
Francie,
Yeah,
I want to ask you a question based on that. So it's very interesting because the AISS has got now a chatbot competition, and one of the topics is to create a chatbot to teach AI literacy.
Right.
And when you further inspect that, you actually just discover how limited the resources currently are for development, like to do it alone. So by that I mean you need a lot of capital in order to build that general artificial intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at industry at the moment, it's kind of as if we, as a race, are only developing general artificial intelligence that is designed to just sell things to people and to buy their attention. So, because that's where the money is. But now the interesting concept is how will you get industry to practically make the shift towards building an artificial intelligence that can assist with exactly that what you just said. But the thing is, it's not capital driven, it's knowledge based driven. What do you suggest?
well, there's a lot of things, but it also now becomes more of a policy issue. Because in an ideal world, if the benefits of AI and the surpluses of enterprise are managed well by a government, you could have a government initiative, but that's very ideal policy based. In terms of just directly incentivizing industry, well, the education sector, like depending on your country, there's a lot of money in it. So if universities could partner with industry to develop something like that, it could be practical. But also the ideal thing is that would be, if AI gives us so much surplus in society, we don't even need. I think this is a bit far ahead of us, but that a lot of things would be controlled by machines, and prices drop due to like massive increases in efficiency. But the problem becomes you don't have people to buy these even massively cheap products. Like if a lot of jobs are automated, then ideally the government would have a lot of leeway in providing UBI for its citizens that is actually livable off of, and creating systems like that. But that's a bit far in the future. Like you can't implement it now. Like the system would just break. But yeah, either incentivizing universities and industries to partner because there is money there. You just need visionaries and lobby groups such as maybe AISS to push that, or 100 years in the future, if we're still around, hopefully some kind of utopian government could do that, but you can't rely on that happening necessarily.
Obviously. I feel like I think with what's currently happening in our current time, like as you're saying, reaching the technology for us is still not ideal and it's still not a reality because it's far-fetched. That's far-fetched technology. But most industries right now, I think they are mostly focused on making money, but it depends on the person who's in charge. Like let's say this person is in charge of a company or is a company founder, but he's driven by passion of what he's doing. That person will give much more focus on research. Yes, he'll give his 60% focus on making revenue for the company so that the company stays alive. But if that person is driven by passion, he'll give much more effort to kind of seeing the way they do things, if the passion is for AI, that person will make effort that people are AI literate, you know, that they're educated about artificial intelligence, but also systems are also integrated to work with humans instead of just the system being in charge. Because if a system is in charge, then humanity is put in danger, and that comes to the topic of human inevitability. You know that we set ourselves in our own demise. So why invent something that might be our last invention? So industries are mostly focused on kind of making revenue instead of just being passionate about the system or creating the AI system. They focus on what the company lasting forever.
Oh, that's a very it's a difficult fact
True.
to like just accept, because like ideally, why isn't industry moving towards creating a better world? Because in essence, when you deliver a service, that's where
Right.
money is. Whether it's an ethical service or not, that's where money is. If you provide someone with something, that's where money is. But
Mm-hmm.
why can there not be money by delivering a healthier, sustainable world? Like, why is there a gap?
I think, I feel like if you look at Amazon, for instance, these people started off by when it comes to their shops, the where customer can basically walk in, take
I've
groceries, and then
seen.
walk out. You've seen that, right?
Yeah, but explain.
It started off as an idea of basically making AI accessible, and also the AI experience, and introducing the AI world or the AI city as a concept to the world. And then now they are using it to collect people's data when they make payments, because now you don't basically just use your card. When you walk in, cameras look at you, facial recognition,
Mm,
they tap in your phone, your number, your ID, your WhatsApp data, your Instagram, like your everything that they need to know about you. And then when they use facial recognition on you, then they search you on all the other camera systems that exist in that radar, in that city, or whatever place that is.
mm,
And then they tap in, they find all your information in. So it's basically, it's not only about just giving the service, but they're also looking for a back end collecting data. That's why I'm saying data for the AI world is the gold mine. Because without
mm.
data, AI doesn't exist.
Exactly.
So companies are, in a way, they are very, very what's the right term? They're invading our privacy, and that's illegal in a way. You know what I'm saying?
Mm,
Like what they're doing is not right, but because it's business and they're giving us an image of, they're selling us basically on what the good stuff they're doing.
mm,
Then we don't see the back end. We don't see the bad stuff. We don't see the disadvantage of using that AI technology.
mm. Like the database being populated with all of your information.
That's why at the start I said privacy will become a thing of the past.
Mm. Like, I feel data collection is not necessarily the problem. I think the transparency of that's the
True.
problem. Because if I can see how your database is being populated and
Uh-huh.
what data you have of me, I'll feel way more comfortable, because I think in essence, like, you kind of know what they can collect just by
True.
Googling your name, everything that you can get on the internet by not signing into accounts that you can get. And the problem is when they actually sell data to other companies, they will allow to get the data for signed in accounts, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So when they make decisions on using your data without your consent, without being transparent to you, that becomes a
Mm.
problem.
So I kind of want to bring the conversation back to like a bit more AI in the workplace itself. And I have a question, which is like the interaction of AI in the workplace. So currently, it's mostly that the companies have got this back end that you discussed, and we're not really aware of what's happening. But I think in order for AI to be used commercially, there needs to be some sort of actual interaction, like a user interface for interacting with the artificial intelligence, if I can say it like that. That's kind of an interesting concept, because if you have a startup now and you don't really want to employ too many people, you will, hypothetically, if you can have like just a simple interface that you can interact with, and behind that is a general artificial intelligence, what's the possibilities of that? Would something like that work, or should AI remain in the back end and not come to the front end? And Francie, David, before you answer, I know Francie is interested in the front end actually. I would like to also hear his opinion.
Yeah, his points are kick.
Oh, well, I mean, my background initially is way more in the back end, so I really like it. But yeah, I'm taking a keen interest in the front end now in a digitization project, so I want to learn it. But with that, with GPT-3, to a degree, I've seen it being able to very basically, just from a sentence that you input, build a basic UI that kind of works roughly. So I mean, at the moment, it's kind of, so yeah, it can build skeletons. GPT-3 can build basic skeletons for your front end UI already from a sentence you input of what you want. So yeah, I'm not sure how much you'd want it there, but it's definitely going there. It also worries me with what'll happen with software developers and web developers when it finally becomes able to very intelligently fulfill client needs from sentences alone and some minor tweaking. Like what'll happen then?
So it's basically future threatening.
Yeah, but I'll also send the link to it in the chat of GPT-3.
Yeah, please do.
It's made by AI as well. But I think, yeah, Elon Musk founded.
Yeah. So the reason why I actually brought up this topic is it's really for personal reasons, but it's something that really intrigues me. I'm going to present a talk on the 6th of October for a user experience organization. And they asked me to discuss the artificial intelligence industry and kind of how that will influence the creatives in the world. How will that influence the designers? How will that influence the people that need to create content? And will it threaten them, or will it actually assist them? And then when I thought about that topic, my mind ran to all different sorts of places, because on the one hand, you can kind of train AI with convolutional neural networks to just mimic what is out there already. And it's going to take work in order to actually operate like that. But on the other hand, you can create assistants. But that's not what Francis said. Like, when is assistance actually replacement and not just assistance?
Wouldn't you say chatbots are also an assistant, an assistant AI system? It doesn't really replace. Yeah, so they're not technically replacing people, but they're kind of assisting.
Yeah. But so for the designing industry and for the creative industry, the arts and culture, how would AI work there?
When you mentioned that, I just thought of one of the videos I've watched or reviewed the Chinese companies. So I think it's Alibaba. They work with one of these fashion companies, right? And these people used AI in a very skilled way. They basically used the system to kind of search the internet or browse the internet of what people normally search for when they talk about fashion, or normally where, like the pictures of people that they post, their clothing, their brand of clothing, the
Mm.
material, the fabrics and everything. And then they use that, and then they give it to the designers, and then they make the clothing using the information they recovered from the internet. Like if people like this kind of hoodie, then they're gonna create that kind of hoodie because people like it. It pops up a lot more than the other one. So they're using AI to be smart in creating products so that the company makes revenue, which is very smart.
Whoa.
It's really smart.
Like customized
Yeah,
demand.
they're taking an approach that is very careful when it comes to their company making revenue, because they want to make sure that the company makes money at the end of the day. So they're
Mm.
using AI to make that.
Yes, that's clever. Um, Francie, with regard to OpenAI, um, can you maybe like tell us a bit more just how it works, like in general? Because I've been on the website, but it seems to like it's research based, or like for our members that have been listening up to now, like what have you benefited out of this? Because obviously that is a AI workplace like OpenAI. It's a business based around artificial intelligence.
Well, so there's a few interesting things. Like, I recently experimented a bit in Unity, which is more like a game building platform or whatever you could call it. But there's a few interesting things. But specifically, I wanted to get into it because there's an open source, a Unity game I want to contribute to, but specifically in machine learning and training, the bots in the game, basically. So one of the things OpenAI has, um, it's OpenAI Gym, which is like a toolkit for reinforcement learning algorithms. So they've got some open source uh, things like OpenAI Gym, which I think is on GitHub. Yeah, it is. It's on GitHub, and anyone can use it to experiment in machine learning without being like someone doing a master's or PhD or like very experienced. It's like it's basically like kind of toolkit, the SDK framework of the SDK thing, but to help you, you know, experiment in machine learning. So yeah, it's for profit, but they've got stuff like OpenAI Gym that's public that you can use. The GPT-3, that's more of a predictive text completer, but you can. Some people have kind of modified it to, generate front-end layouts. That isn't on GitHub, but you can access it via an API. It's just not giving anyone the source code of it to work with, but the API is there, free for you to use. So I think, I mean, they can be for profit or whatever, but a lot of the things they're putting on GitHub, they're putting some documentation. You can use it um, as you want. There's other things as well. There's machine learning agents for Unity, for game design, where instead of coding the AI of a thing, you just find behaviors and rewards and run, and you train it, you run simulations till it gets good enough to do the thing. Without you having to put in a million switches and if statements.
Mm.
So that's basically it. They're providing open source AI libraries and things for you to use.
Mm.
Oh, one last thing. So yeah, Elon Musk founded it. I don't think he's a big donor at the moment. I might be wrong. But the idea behind finding it was to democratize AI and not have it in the hands of a few, because in his vision, AI could end humanity if it becomes AGI and decides, and if it can edit its source code, the experiment we shouldn't get wrong. So he wants it as open source as possible so that everyone can contribute to the collective safety of AI development, and it's not something that someone that's selfish and short-sighted can mess up, create something that lost creation. So that's the idea behind them. So I mean, they might be for research and whatever, but they do publish things open source because that's kind of what the founder wanted them to do.
Whoa. So open source is technically a benefit more than a loss, because most of the stuff there is not copyrighted, right? So anybody can use it. So the person who created a cool code is not gonna be losing in a way.
Yeah, and people also benefit them by adding their expertise to an AI. And, people requesting a very nice feature to their open source project. Everyone benefits from it. Yeah.
That's a very interesting topic, the democracy of artificial intelligence.
That's interesting.
Mm.
That's really an interesting topic, because now when you mention democracy of artificial intelligence, now people kind of will want to link it with the general concept of democracy in the real world we live in, like if we can have an artificial intelligence democratic society, then why cannot we have a democratic society, basically?
I just had the craziest idea, and I like seriously just now. But okay, so tapping into the psychology of people, we kind of know that conversations are based on things that people share, like things that you have in common, interests you have in common. And especially if you look at social platforms like Instagram, you can see that people always discuss a certain meme, or because it's something that people have in common. Now, I'm wondering if you can tap into that psychology, make AI development simple enough so that, let's say, us three, we would like to have our own artificial intelligence, but it will be a general type of artificial intelligence, even if with low quality, quote unquote. But then Francie can come and he can say, you know what, I want an artificial intelligence that can do this. And then you can say, I want, and then he provides us with that. So it's open source. And then it's kind of like a group on WhatsApp. Like you can have a group that comes together and develop a general artificial intelligence. And when that actually gets speed, so then the group will essentially grow. And then the general AI will be based on what humans need and not what companies need.
But wouldn't that essentially turn out to be what companies need? Because I feel like that group of people will be like, hey, this is good stuff, let's make a company.
Exactly. So the companies will kind of transition.
It's not bad. So the humans become the
creator of third minds. So
wow.
I've read this one book by Napoleon Hill called Think and Grow Rich. And one of the chapters discusses the third mind. And essentially what that is when you come together with other people that share interest and you discuss things in depth, so not shallow topics, then in essence, you create a third mind. But now using the technology we have, what if you create a general artificial intelligence that will serve as that third mind, and that will just grow and expand until it's really useful for more than like just your certain group that developed it?
I think I just saw that idea becoming a reality, and I feel like, because understand this, it's it's not just two or three people who are going to be sharing ideas. Let's say maybe 100 minds are working on like they are putting data on creating that system.
Yeah.
The system is Okay, let me put you back on a fictional state for a moment. Ultron, basically. Ultron is Stark, is what? Is thingy, is Bruce Banner, is whatever, all in together, right? That's basically it. All those people are putting their data in one mind, as you say,
In
it's a
one
third
mind.
a third
Exactly.
mind, as you call it. Yeah. So that thing is going to be super strong, going to be super powerful in a way with all that knowledge in it. And as it grows, it won't have limitations.
And the thing is that the ethics or the morals of the creators will inevitably be introduced into that system with bias. So
Yeah.
let's say my bias is I don't want to discriminate against anybody. Then the artificial intelligence that I will develop is going to be biased towards that. And in essence, it's like the successful people always, well, not always, but like most of the time, do have a good feeling and sense of reality. And that will eliminate the um, localized development of one company's morals.
Okay. Yeah, I understand that bias part of that system.
Yo,
Wow.
is there anything that anybody wants to add? Because we are almost out of time.
Well, that's technically a lot, but hey, there's always next week, right?
There's always next week.
Um, I just want to add, it's um for you guys, running the AISS. Um, the first link I sent in chat, it's Synth Ethics Initiative. So they're kind of like the AISS, but with synthetic biology and genetic engineering. And the approach they're taking with interacting with members, they've got Facebook, LinkedIn, a website, everything. But they have these kind of polls where they say, do you think we should genetically engineer livestock to not feel pain and stuff like that? Is that ethical to do in order to be more humane? And they post polls like that and ask, and if you vote yes or no, please elaborate if you'd like to. That might be a good idea to interact with your members to see what they think about certain
Wow.
policy and ethical questions around AI. So that's the first link I sent, Synth Ethics. They're kind of your guys' equivalent in synthetic biology and genetic engineering, I think. But there might be some nice things they're doing that you might want to incorporate.
Yeah, that's actually wow. That's a great idea.
David, you can tell me. So, for the people that listen up to now, Francie is part of the digitization project. He's playing a very important role, and it's very nice to actually talk to him now. And based on that idea, David, I know that we kind of had a list of topics that we want to discuss in the future,
True.
but
True.
this genetics and artificial intelligence and the policies of that's actually very intriguing, and I haven't thought about that.
Are we doing it? Yes, I have a list. Part of the list, I have like a long list of these things. Genetics and the biotechnology and AI are kind of like the sweet, juicy stuff when it comes to that knowledge. That's
Yeah,
I have that. I love that stuff.
yeah. So, Francie, how about we make next week um, artificial intelligence in genetics,
So kind of like the medical part.
kind of like the medical side of AI.
Nah, I'm good with it.
I
That
think that
sounds interesting. Yeah.
let's do that. And then during the week, we can exactly what you proposed, Francie. Then we can just um, ask questions on the AISS group, like how people feel about this. And then even now, we can start telling people that next week this will be the topic.
Cool. Sounds good.
Okay. Yeah. So thanks everybody for joining. I think at this point in time we can probably stop recording, and yeah, then we can call this the session, and then just lastly, is there anything else that anybody wants to add, maybe within the recording?
I would say this is a beginning of a session that would probably take you people by storm with making people aware about AI. So
Yeah.
this initiative is big, and I think this is just a start.
Mm.
So future might be brighter. Just keep
Exactly.
engaging.
Hell yeah. We can stop the recording right on that note.
There we go.